listening to the 14th Source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I am D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And we are your two overeducated, codependent nerd hosts, bringing you the things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive and critical lenses in the episode for Friday, July 21st, 2023.
Oof, or as I like to call it, hot time in Seattle.
Oh yeah, it's
I say it like, and I'm sorry, every time I complain about this, it's always like, oh, it's so hot in Seattle. And then Dan's like, oh, how hot is it? And I say, oh, it's been 80 degrees all week. And Dan's like, ho, 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 ho.
It hit 108 last week.
Yeah.
Not earlier this week. Actually, when we're recording this, sometime during the week, dear listeners, just to keep it mysterious, we're actually we're experiencing 2 days of cooler temperatures. It only hit 95 today. And I'm not even being sarcastic. Like, it was actually pleasant because there was a breeze and the sun was nice. It was nice.
So yeah, it's been a bit of a thing in Seattle where it's like, oh, it's warm, it's humid, right?
Humidity sucks.
And Seattle is not, for people that don't know, like for the 5 of you that don't know Seattle, it doesn't like it wasn't built for hot. Right? Like, most places don't have air conditioning. They don't have those things. They're like, oh, no, it's fine. We just open the window.
Right. And it's like our hometown 10 years ago.
Right. And then you get to the point where, like, oh, shit, the window opening doesn't work anymore. Right? Like, it's, I'm actually shocked at how I see apartments being built or condos or whatever. And they're like, oh, a new blah, blah, blah. And I don't see central air on the list. I'm like, where do you think you're building your place? Like your condo, right? Like, guess what? It's future Seattle, right? Like, it's gonna be hot, smoky, and shit. It's not smoky right now. That's the one good thing I can say.
Ironically, I'm described using all 3 adjectives as well.
Hot, smoky, and shit.
Depending on who you're talking to.
Oh, that's just your course evaluations summarized. It's bad girl summer. No, it's
Barbie girl summer apparently. So we're also, this is the week that the Barbenheimer bomb drops on the planet. The thing that got the internet super excited that these 2 movies were happening at the very same time.
The bomb drops, making that joke about Barbenheimer. I will say my favorite like pre-review I've seen. Said that like about Oppenheimer was like, oh, it's pretty good, but it doesn't really like they made some obvious joke like it doesn't really explode at the end. It's like let's all make nuclear weapon jokes.
Like the people saying, oh, Titanic was pretty great, but the ending was a downer.
I get a sinking feeling every time I watch it.
It's funny. I saw a post on social media. I don't remember where it was, but it's actually a local guy. David Barry. He reposted a Twitter account discussing film, who noted that 15 years ago, one day ago, The Dark Knight and Mamma Mia came out on the same day. And he said, the Dark Mama walked so that Barbenheimer could run. And it was a long walk to get there, but pretty good times. I like this.
Or is it Mama Night? I don't know.
Well, that's a YouTube short that just happened somewhere. Every time a bell rings, a YouTube short gets made. Anyway, we're not here to make shorts. We're not here to make anything. It sounds like actually a lot of the entertainment industry isn't either. Because I don't know if you've heard, dear listeners, everybody's on strike, or at least it's getting there.
Oh, it definitely, right. So we're in the midst of the WGA, SAG-AFTRA. AFTRA? I don't know how they say it. The SAG. UPS might go on strike in, I think, a week or 2?
The delivery service.
Yes,
okay, it's not related necessarily to the entertainment industry, but everybody in terms of everybody going on strike, yes. Okay.
But also, I guess I just saw an article that part of Broadway, basically the makeup, wardrobe, and stage manager guild, or at least that part of the guild, might also strike. it's a strike in time.
And it seems like it's because a lot of contracts are coming due.
And the people on the other side of the table apparently are all shitheads.
Right. So the WGA, it's the Writers Guild.
Right.
And we have the SAG-AFTRA's actors, right? Mm-hmm. It's interesting because a lot of these, what kind of came out at the beginning of this, especially with the WGA, is like these contracts that they've been working under have not really been updated in a while. Like, I heard the 60s?
Well, I think there have been small changes here and there.
Right.
But like, just, I guess for me, what I see was the SAG released the, like, here are the things we wanted and the response we got from the whatever. And some of them were they just felt like, what the what?
That's the interesting thing. It's because it just seems like, I can't remember like the overall sort of AMPTPA, something like that. Editor's note, the name of the organization that is not negotiating with the WGA or SAG-AFTRA is called the AMPTP, short for the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. Now back to the show.
The bad guys, yeah.
The bad guys, right?
Bob Iger. Let's paint a face.
What makes this interesting is it's just like, you hear about potential striking, you even see strikes, and then there's always negotiation, and usually over time, negotiations sort of settle. But like the kind of bizarre part about all this is like the bad guys, I should look up what actually the acronym is. They are not participating at all in negotiations, really. I mean, they are listening to offers, but they're, especially in the case of the Writers Guild, some interesting shitty stuff has come out where they're just like, no, we're not even going to look at you, right?
Like, we're waiting for some of you to lose your homes.
Right. That's kind of, it's like, hey, it's being... the word I keep wanting to say is shitty, but they're just being shitty.
Right.
The bad guys in this, and we're taking sides here. We're not objective journalists, nor are we journalists in general. They're really operating under this mindset of like, we're just going to wait them out because I'm guessing A, they have the money, and 2, they have the power in this case. And I think some of that is under false pretenses. I think because they're seeing the rise of AI and thinking and we've talked about that a couple weeks ago,
right.
Like, oh, now they get to have creative power, and finally the decisions that they often give that are ignored, they'll be able to do, and we'll see how good they actually are. We won't, because it's all bad.
It's all garbage.
But it's so bizarre. It's like this internet mentality of the tech bros, AI bros, and this sort of fight against the creative class that felt like it came out of nowhere.
Well, so I want to reference a tweet by TV Zone John Rogers, who I think I reference every third episode.
For those doing the drinking game, take a shot.
Right, but the idea that he actually had a tweet thread today about how I guess he was at a Teamsters meeting about the UPS strike, or at least he saw something, and how one of the pushes on the UPS strike is not about like the best or the most well-paid parts of the UPS guild, the Teamsters Guild. It was about like the part-time guys. It was about whatever. And he talked about how the WGA, like, it's not striking for the well-to-do creatives. It's not striking for the guys leading the room. It's striking for the junior writers. And apparently SAG-AFTRA, like, one of their things is the way they're treating extras and junior actors. And the idea that all of these strikes, all of these labor efforts are, while, like, there's wide scope, a huge component of it is about the junior people, like the people that are trying to get into the industry, and if they don't get support, they will leave. And his commentary was the idea that, like, in the reason why the CEOs like Bob Iger and Zaslav,
Warner Discovery guy,
and whoever else, like, the reason, like, they even say things like, "Oh, what you're asking is unrealistic," is that these are guys whose whole, like, professional history has been about when the guy next to you is suffering, you stab him in the back and boot yourself up. Right?
They're businessmen.
They're they're CEO types. They're sociopaths. Like, they're the people who, like, their whole thing was, you don't try to elevate the person below you. You use them as a stepping stone. And I don't think John Rogers is wrong. Like, I think that's actually like,
right, no.
That's one of the things we see with a lot of these CEO types is they don't look at, they're like, it's all about inflating themselves and maybe the other Richies like them, you know?
Right.
Rich guys. Not people named Richie. I don't.
It's a large-scale version of the problem we always see, the corporate side of the entertainment industry, where it's this unhealthy and unholy mix of creativity and capitalism. And for people to make money, apparently they have to interact with each other. It really highlights the fact that the people that get into the corporate or administrative positions are not people from the creative class. It's like it's very rare in the entertainment industry where you see, you know, if there's a ceiling, and I'm guessing that's probably intended and wanted for most creatives. It's not like, oh, they become a showrunner, but then they go, you know what I want to do? Run the studio.
Right. Bob Iger and Zaslav, neither of them were writers or actors. Like, they didn't grow up in the system and then, you know, whatever. They're just CEO dudes.
And I think of, unfortunately, I can't remember names right now, but I think of, is it Iwata, the guy that ran Nintendo for a very long time? Like, he was a programmer, but he loved video games because he made video games. And it was that love of making and playing games that drove his decisions as president of Nintendo. And those decisions were in the service of Nintendo and the games specifically that they were producing. And when Nintendo, I think it was during the Wii U era, was experiencing some hardships, rather than firing people, he cut his salary by like an astronomical amount. But it's because, in theory, I'm not saying it's the only reason, but part of it is that he was the employee at one point, right? So not only does that carry into maybe the kinds of games or kind of company they became, but also it provided a empathy for everybody that worked under him.
Right.
And again, that's only one example, and it is a good example, but not every company can be like that. Well, perhaps every company should be like that,
right?
But not every company will be like that. And I guess it's kind of thing I stumbled on there. It's like the thing that's startling to me is just the incredible lack of empathy that's being displayed by the studio heads.
I mean, just the writers, like, some of them need to go homeless, and that, right. I forget who it was that said that, but then said it was cruel but necessary.
I think that was Zaslav.
And it's like, well, it's not necessary. Like, the fact that you could stop it, like, you literally could.
Yeah, I think the quote was something like, all we have to do is wait until October. That's when, I don't know why you picked that month, but that's when their leases start running out and they're going to need to start buying food, and then they'll cave. It's like, fuck you, buddy. Speaking to the point you were making about, this is not actually about the big names, this is about the working class of the entertainment industry, the people who are perhaps working paycheck to paycheck, or just aren't making enough money to live their lives, right, as long as they have a job. I forgot what the sort of contextual part of the tweet was, but basically the contrast of how much a writer makes in a year versus is pretty much the same amount that Bob Iger makes in a day. And like, it's like, and you can't negotiate at all. Again, that lack of empathy, that we're going down a dangerous road here. I don't want to call anybody like a sociopath, but they're definitely not helping themselves with their behavior.
Well, and actually I say that because a friend of mine once said that like the common trait amongst CEOs is that like a majority of them are sociopaths. Like, you don't become that person unless you're already like a cruel, like, you have that cruelty, you have that, like, I'm gonna screw whoever I can to make more money for the people that give me money. Right. And I don't know if that's universal. Like, not all CEOs, right? Like, certainly there are some out there. Right. I joke, actually, I have a chat group where I basically said, like, yeah, most CEOs are garbage, and one guy came in and said, like, oh, actually, I don't know, I met some good CEOs, and everyone else was like, like, it's not a universal trait, except right now it certainly feels that way. And we see this discussion of, you know, CEO of company X making, you know, quadrillions of dollars and complaining about, or like talking about how like we have to make cuts, you know, for the people that can barely live working for the company.
And it's just that they're so all the major studios are just in sync with each other. It's almost as if they've gathered together and decided on a unified way to behave. It's almost like they've they've unitized. They've
made a group, an association,
right? What's the bad guy version of the Justice League?
I mean, and it's actually it is wild because we've already seen that. Yeah, that definitely happens, right? Like in tech, we had Facebook, I think Apple and Adobe and Google or something had all agreed, like, we won't poach people from your companies. So, like, at the executive level, right? Mm-hmm. Like, they're doing that. And you're like, oh, shit. Like, so, yeah, it's a challenge. It is.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, the one thing I do wish from this we could see some sort of, like, something different. Like, we could see a different solution. Like, I don't know what that would be. I would love the idea that, like, hey, some of these creatives decide to, like, form their own cooperatives and create media that we can ingest. Except that, like, I don't know how that works in a modern ecosystem. I mean, I think back to the previous, was it the writer's strike, where Joss Whedon, who, let's not get too excited, but he went and did Dr. Terrible Sing-Along Blog, or Dr. Horrible.
Yeah.
And that was fun. It was, like, all done basically, like, not part of any of the big companies, so it didn't have any of the union bind. But I want to see something like that where we see, like, new creatives doing new stuff. And
well, you know what you're talking about. Independent film. Right?
Yes.
That's actually an interesting observation, because based on the current sort of business model, especially when it comes to movies, a lot of people have been lamenting the death of independent film, just because the common sort of refrain is you can't make money unless you spend, and this speaks to what we talked about last week, I believe, unless you spend a $200 million and you have a superhero in it, right? Then otherwise you just won't make money. I'm like, well, now... Right. There might be spots opening up in the schedule.
Well, and maybe this can be the big talk about why do we spend $200 million on a film, or 300?
Why do we spend $200 million on a 3-hour action film that's only a part one?
Sorry.
Mission Impossible. What are you doing? Come on.
Impossible. What's it called? Ground Zeroes or something? Whatever. Dead Reckoning. Part one. And it's almost $300 million, 3 hours plus, or 2 hours plus, and it is part one.
You couldn't fit a Mission Impossible story inside of 3 hours.
Which is shocking, because they did it in 50 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. One of the frustrations is, part of me wants to say, like, oh, but we have, like, YouTube. It's like, whoa, but let's crash into another company with problems. Right?
Well, yeah.
Like, what is even if these people wanted to do something, it's like they'd have to also have a distribution method.
Yeah.
Like, they'd have to, like, build a website or rely on one of these other companies that's actually just as shitty or shittier than the ones they're already dealing with.
Right. I mean, if YouTube were independently owned and not, is it Google that owns YouTube?
Yeah.
Then I might feel less, I'd be more inclined to recommend people to going to YouTube. But yeah, it's just, but that's the thing with the internet. Like, it's not a physical place, and you always are beholden to someone else's service to an extent. I think the other thing that holds YouTube back is that it's a free service. And so you are absolutely beholden to their whims and desires, right? And not a paying customer.
There's a bigger conversation about like how the web or the internet changed. How it went from a bunch of, kind of disconnected sites and servers to what they call Web 2.0, which Web 2 is basically everything is centralized at a few places. Mm-hmm. And, of course, Web 3 is just vomit. Yeah.
A burning hellscape.
But anyway, yeah, that's good. Woo!
I think the thing that kind of bums me out is that certain corners of the internet were talking about the writer's strike, but I feel like it didn't really get a lot of attention till the actors went on strike, because you're seeing more faces that you recognize on the street.
Right.
Fran Drescher, had that incredible sort of declaration of war.
This is the Screen Actors Guild. Yeah, she kicked
We are labor
into a pit.
Yeah, it was incredible. Yeah. Go Fran Drescher. Talk about a career. From the hit sitcom The Nanny all the way to president of SAG-AFTRA. Pretty cool.
Well, it's funny. It's actually people shared a clip from the original series Nanny.
Oh yeah,
where it's her with I never saw the show, so I don't know the context, but I think it's like the person she worked for.
Yes, the stuffy British man.
And he wants to go into like something, but there's a strike, and there are people striking outside. And she says, "No, the 3 things my mother told me was, thing 1, thing 2, never cross a picket line,
right?
And then third thing, whatever." And the idea that she won't go into the venue, like a theater or whatever, because there's a strike,
right?
And it's funny because seeing that, you're like, "Oh, that's a I don't know the context of the episode, but it's like, oh, that's a weird thing." But now it's like, "Oh, yeah, that's who she is," right?
Yeah, said by a union member, written by a union member, right?
Right.
In a way, there's not to get like, English major and like poetic about it, but like it feels like the bill has come due for how hard we leaned on the entertainment industry during the pandemic, right? It's like they had a bunch of stuff in the can that they were releasing more quickly. Asking actors to come to work during a pandemic, and sometimes shows they made shows that just pretended there was no pandemic going on screen at the very least. And if anything, what's good about that is that I think people are more aware, consumers are more aware of how important streaming is to the industry now, and it won't be any less important going forward. And considering how much and how often we let the work of creative people into our lives, into our house, how much we sustained our whatever happiness we could squeeze out of every day from their work. Mm-hmm. The common people's response, right? The consumer's response seemed to have generally been nothing but supportive.
Well, I hope so.
There's always assholes on the internet, right? But generally, like what I like about it getting more visibility once the actors went on strike is like everybody's going like, yeah, fucking, what are you guys doing? I mean, people like Zaslav and Iger have not been making good choices publicly recently anyway. So, but they don't seem to be swayed by public opinion either. So right. I don't know what the answer is. Do we just cancel all our streaming services?
Well, actually, I'm told that the guilds are saying don't do that yet, mostly because they don't think that'll matter.
Right. Also, I mean, it's a conversation we don't have any reference for, but like, how are they making money? I mean, I think we've talked about that briefly. It's just like the landscape has changed, where television was an ad-based service, right. and streaming seemed to be just like a subscription-based service, and like they're making a lot of content for what seems to be generally not too much money coming. Yeah. Oh yeah, we're talking about that when it comes to Paramount Plus. Obviously, the biggest issue right now is that the studio heads are not budging, but it seems like there's a lot of leaks here that we're trying to stop as well. Everything from the monetization to obviously how content gets made and in terms of like AI and whatnot. And they're trying to safeguard against that, but it's just... Or
even, like, I know there's things that the Writers Guild also, like, the way they run, was it mini rooms or micro rooms?
Yeah.
The way the Screen Actors Guild wants to basically just turn people into props. Like, hey, you show up one day and we'll capture your face.
Oh, right.
Which is an AI-related thing, but it's
SAG
like
didn't want that. The bad guys wanted that.
Right, SAG didn't want it. I'm sorry, yeah. Like, SAG was fighting that. Just all these things, like all these pieces of how can we commodify and reduce the people making the content.
Right. For those that don't know, one of these sort of the terms that was offered by, again, I don't remember the name, the acronym, but the bad guys, as we're calling them for the purpose of this episode, was say, hey, if you are was like an extra, we reserve the right to like scan you work one day or something like that. We reserve the right to also scan your body and use that for whatever we want to, as much as we want to, for infinity.
Which is like when you consider what they're going to pay the same rate,
right.
The same 1 day rate.
Right. Oh, that's what it was.
And if you consider what like we've seen with films where they can turn anyone into a virtual zombie, right? I say that as someone who just recently watched The Flash, which has quite a few virtual zombies in it. So, like, that's just wild, right? Like, you're just someone who's trying to, like, break into the industry as an actor. And you're like, hey, I was an extra in this film. And they're like, oh, we don't want you anymore. We're going to use your face in perpetuity. We're going to turn you into a virtual doll that we do what we want with.
Right. You can be a superhero at the Justice Society meeting, or you could be number 14 in the next Human Centipede movie, right? And you don't have any control.
Can you imagine in that world, right? Like, I'm coming out like, oh boy, I got used in this new movie where I'm, person number 3 on the Human Centipede.
Yeah. Not good. It's ongoing. Yes, it's ongoing, and we'll come back with any significant updates. Although we don't have our ears are to the same ground that yours are, but
right.
We'll talk about it now just because there's so much stuff to talk about. And we can kind of see how these things are interacting. It'll be weird to see. Hopefully, we don't get to the point where we see other guilds strike as well.
Hold on to your butts.
Yeah, but. And that's the thing, like you talked about UPS and the Broadway folks, specifically the sort of behind the curtain people,
right?
Who aren't directly related to what's going on with these two, the WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes.
Right, they're not. Like, neither is actually directly related.
But it's weird that all this stuff is happening at the same time.
Well, and it definitely feels like once you see. Like if you're in a guild and you see like this other guild go to the mat, you're like, all right, I guess we will too.
Right.
And part of me actually hopes that like as much as it will affect lots of things negatively, like in terms of me watching shows or me getting packages or whatever other guilds, go to the mat, I kind of hope that becomes the theme of the year. Right? Like, I want to see, more unions being like, actually, this is our time to punch the rich dude in the dick.
Although I'd love to see one story where there's a negotiation where, like, the guild gets most, if not everything they want with little pushback. Something nice. Rich people, show us that there's at least one of you. All right? One nice one out there, please.
I do joke that... that Paizo, which is the company I talk about all the time, they continue to talk about how they're having a positive discussion with their guild because they unionize.
Right. Oh, right.
Right. Basically the creatives there, and while not perfect, it they've never the executives of that company have never come back and said, "Whoa, fuck the guild. I hope they become homeless." Right. Right. Like that's at that point, that's like, whoa, that's a high bar. I guess you guys are good guys.
It's so sad.
So anyway,
enjoy your entertainment while you got it, and hopefully things get resolved in a positive way soon. But it does not look like it. And even if things get resolved, let's just say by October. Even if you start up the entertainment machine, it's going to get a while for projects that were in motion or were just about to start getting into motion to actually get back on track. So there's going to be like a drought of, I'm guessing, scripted content, basically, that we're going to be feeling pretty hard, maybe in a year or so. This doesn't just impact us right now. It's impacting not only the writers and actors in the future, but it's impacting the consumers in the future who, God, because especially when it comes to nerd stuff, people get very excited and get very mad when release dates get pushed. It's like,
right.
You shouldn't be freaking out about that anyway, but like, it's going to get messier in some ways if that happens. So that's why I want to get this done quickly. Come on, everybody. Let's fix stuff. Let's get it going so that we don't lose the momentum.
Come on, rich guys.
Come on, rich guys.
Fix yourself.
What is, So if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page of this episode at forallintents.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in commentary with other listeners on our Facebook page.
You can also find us on other social media, specifically the ones that we frequent, which means you can find me on Instagram at DeepBethelComics, and you can find Andrew on Mastodon at ProfoundDark at Dice.camp.
While you're on our website, forallintents.net, you can also take a look at our YouTube page, which you can find by clicking on the link in the corner that says YouTube. There you'll find this show, which is simulcast in YouTube. And if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please like and subscribe, or as the kids like to say, ring that bell.
We use 2 tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusi, the other is called District 4. Both written and performed by Kevin MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire.
You can find his music at incompetech.filmmusic.io, and that's all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 Attribution License.
If you like the show and like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use. What would help us out even more, though, would be to leave some sort of review, whether a text review or using their proprietary metric helps spread the word to new potential listeners through the magic of algorithms. Andrew,
What?
we're going to go into this in depth later, but I think you've been so excited for it. I just want to touch on it briefly because apparently you're a man all about fishing.
I am, which is weird. I hate fishing in real, but I seem to like fishing in video game.
Wait, you're talking about like JRPG, everybody stop, we're gonna do fishing to level up and stuff? Or are you talking about like
All of them.
all the fishing?
All
the fishing. Oh boy.
Well, I just like realizing how much like I played RPGs that had fishing. I played Stardew Valley, which had fishing, and I realized like, well, I'm doing a lot of fishing. I played other games, as I believe I've discussed. I think I name dropped that I was playing Dredge.
Right. Big fan. You seem to be a big fan.
I'm a big fishing fan. Expect a full commentary on Dredge and my obsession with Lovecraftian fishing in the near future.
I think the first game I remember being a console gamer that I remember with fishing was probably one of the Breath of Fire games.
Yeah, for me, I distintly remember, I think, Breath of Fire 3, when it was on the PlayStation.
Yeah.
It had fishing, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool.
Wow.
Although that wasn't nearly as cool as how we've gotten fishing technology upgrade. Not that fishing itself is that interesting. Just that it makes apparently for a pretty solid gameplay loop.
Right. So I can't wait to hear more about that. So until you fish the tenebrous depths of the Eldritch Sea, dear listeners, I'm D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And for all intents and purposes,
that was a podcast.
for all intents and purposes, Cthulhu Fatagan. Sorry.
I can't say those words, man.
Cthulhu.
What did you just say? What was the thing leading into this?
I forgot.
God damn it! We
are
can't
so
both do
old.
This.
Oh, well done. You've dredged.
I dredged. I got both endings.
Oh, at once. That is non-Euclidean.
No, not both at once.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm gonna min-max my companion.
Right? Like, oof.
Roll back the tape.
Door shuts. Door shits? What? No.
Yep. Door Shits. With Dan and Andrew. Welcome to Door Shits.
The story about how your door shits on you.
Quiero bistec todos los días.